What happens when the lights are brightest? Only to reveal that you're no longer welcome. That was the exact question echoing across Hollywood this past weekend as Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, found herself in the most unthinkable position. Not just ignored, not just awkwardly side-eyed, but visibly, publicly excluded from the A-list stage she once dominated. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The L'Oréal Paris 20th Anniversary Women of Worth Gala was never supposed to be controversial. It's a celebration of strength, of sisterhood, of global impact, where female powerhouses come together to uplift one another. But this year, the spotlight twisted, and Meghan Markle became the headline for all the wrong reasons. She entered in full glam. All eyes were on her. But within an hour, her eyes were darting, glassy, frantic, desperate for an exit. By the end of the evening, she was gone. Out a side door, escorted by her team. In the room, it barely flinched. So what happened? Why did one of the most famous women in the world, an actress, duchess, global brand, an alleged advocate for women, get iced out of the premier gala meant to celebrate exactly that kind of woman? More importantly, who made that decision and why now? Because this wasn't just a red carpet misstep. This was a reckoning. A moment of brutal clarity in a city that rarely says the quiet part out loud. But that night, oh, Hollywood screamed it. Now, we've heard the whispers for months. Meghan's fading influence. Her rocky attempts to re-enter showbiz. Netflix deals under review. Spotify cutting the cord. Brand partnerships reportedly on pause. But none of that prepared anyone for what went down inside the Beverly Hilton that night. Imagine this. Meghan, glowing, camera-ready, stepping onto the gold-trimmed carpet beneath crystal chandeliers. Her dress, reportedly custom Dior, flowed like liquid light. Her smile was poised, her stride deliberate. But the vibe? Off. There was no warm chorus of greetings. No surging crowd of photographers screaming her name. Just silence. Tense. Calculated. Where were the other celebrities? Where were the warm embraces, the hey girl greetings, the mutual admiration moments that normally flood red carpets? Instead, something strange happened. People stepped back. Not dramatically, not rudely, just enough. Enough to be noticeable. Enough to signal something was very, very wrong. And it only got worse from there. Because just hours before, Meghan's team had supposedly been in high spirits. Multiple anonymous insiders claim they were already crafting press angles for the next day. Talking points about Meghan's return to her roots, how she was standing shoulder to shoulder with real women, and that this gala would be the perfect soft launch for her upcoming initiatives. But none of those talking points survived the night. Why? Because the very women Meghan sought to align herself with, the actresses, the advocates, the industry power brokers, weren't having it. Now, let's stop and ask the question that's already burning through social media threads like wildfire. How does a woman who once stood on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, flanked by royalty, end up being quietly shunned by her own celebrity peers? Is this simply fame fatigue? Or has Meghan Markle crossed an invisible line in Hollywood, one she can't walk back from? What we witnessed that night wasn't just a PR fumble. It was a fall from grace, a symbolic uninviting, a public gesture that screamed, "You're not one of us anymore." Let that sink in. Because for years, Meghan was treated as untouchable. She had the royal title, the Netflix docuseries, the Archetypes podcast, the power couple aura with Prince Harry. She was the darling of Vanity Fair spreads and Vogue guest editorships. Oprah gave her a primetime confessional. Gloria Steinem called her a feminist voice. Hollywood rolled out the carpet. But somewhere along the line, that carpet was quietly rolled back up. And Meghan? She didn't get the memo. Until now. And the timing couldn't be more brutal. With her brand teetering post-Spotify, with Archewell reportedly downsizing, and with critics calling her a brand without a message, the gala was supposed to be her reset, her reclamation of the narrative, her next act. Instead, it became a cautionary tale. Witnesses described the slow unraveling in real time, the seating arrangement confusion, the hushed conversations, the moment Meghan tried to join a group of actresses, only to be left awkwardly lingering. The photographers who turned away mid-frame, the executive who offered a terse nod, and nothing more. And then, the final blow, reports of a direct confrontation. That's right. According to a leaked account from someone allegedly close to the event organizers, there was a moment when Meghan attempted to pose with a high-profile L'Oreal ambassador. The actress reportedly declined, politely but firmly. What followed was a chain reaction of discomfort, then whispers, then a ripple through the room. You could feel it. Meghan did too. Her smile wavered. Her team closed in. Phones lit up. Plans changed. And just like that, the Duchess disappeared. No farewell. No interview. No final pose. Just a rushed exit through a staff corridor. Back door. No spotlight. Here's the kicker. L'Oreal didn't release a formal statement. They didn't need to. The optics were enough. And Hollywood? It speaks in symbols. So why now? Why this moment? It's no secret that 2025 has been the year of redefinition for celebrity influence. The public wants authenticity. Activism is being scrutinized. Performative feminism isn't just passé, it's under fire. And many are asking, is Meghan Markle still the voice of modern womanhood? Or has she become its cautionary echo? Even her former supporters seem quieter. Oprah hasn't commented. Amal Clooney didn't attend. Ellen? Silent. Serena Williams? Nowhere to be seen. And that's where this story goes deeper than just a snub. Because this wasn't just about Meghan. It was about a seismic shift in how celebrity power is managed, earned, and lost. And how quickly Hollywood can turn when the optics no longer align. But let's be honest, this isn't just about brand politics or red carpet etiquette. There's a human story here. A woman walked into a room believing she belonged. She left that room in tears. And whatever you think of her, that moment matters. Because it wasn't supposed to end like this. Meghan wasn't supposed to run. But she did. And as we'll reveal in the chapters ahead, what triggered her flight wasn't just one incident. It was a carefully orchestrated breakdown. A quiet consensus among the powerful voices of Hollywood that her seat at the table had expired. And yet, there's more. Because one A-lister reportedly whispered something just before Meghan disappeared. Just one name. That's all it took. And once Meghan heard it, her entire facade collapsed. But what name was it? And why did it send Meghan Markle running out of the most important event of her year? Face turned, mascara streaked, dignity unraveling. That's where it gets dark. Because what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Did Meghan Markle even belong at the gala that night? That's the question Hollywood can't stop whispering. And the more we dig, the more suspicious it gets. Because here's the kicker. Some insiders swear up and down that Meghan wasn't even on the original guest list. Not officially. Not confirmed. Not cleared by the L'Oreal Paris team that spent months crafting this ultra-exclusive, ultra-vetted 20th anniversary celebration of Women of Worth. So how did she get in? Better question. Who let her in? Now, imagine the scene in the weeks leading up to the gala. PR agencies scrambling. Publicists negotiating red carpet slots like seasoned chess players. Brand strategists reviewing which celebrities fit the theme of empowerment, resilience, authenticity. This wasn't a free-for-all event. It wasn't a casual Hollywood mixer. It was surgical. Every guest was carefully curated to match L'Oreal's new, post-strike message. Real women, real voices. And here's where it gets interesting. Multiple sources claim Meghan Markle's name was nowhere to be found on the final media credentials list submitted to Getty Images, nor on the official seating arrangements sent out 2 days before the gala. Her name didn't appear next to any brand table. She wasn't listed under talent or media. So how was she even allowed through the doors? Let's break it down. According to a leak from someone allegedly connected to the planning team, Meghan's name suddenly appeared 3 days before the event, through a partner brand submission. Now, if you know Hollywood, you know what that means. Sometimes a corporate sponsor will submit names for red carpet access. Usually influencers, TikTok stars, the occasional actress with a social justice campaign that aligns with the brand's messaging. These submissions are typically pre-approved by multiple departments. PR, legal, executive. But this one was flagged. A non-confirmed +1 was how one internal email reportedly described her status. Another staffer allegedly asked, "Is this a misprint? She's not on the final list." Suddenly, there was a scramble. And Meghan's team? Silent. No replies to email confirmations. No RSVP response from an official channel. Just a name and a ticking clock. But that wasn't the end of it. Because someone, still unknown, gave the green light. Someone approved Meghan Markle's attendance without fanfare, without press notification, without the signature rollout that typically comes with a duchess gracing your event. So was this a calculated quiet inclusion? A behind-the-scenes power move? Or a dangerous oversight? What if it was something even more strategic? Some believe Meghan's team pushed her inclusion through a third-party brand partner. Not as a speaker, not as an honoree, but as a guest of a guest. A subtle workaround. A soft entry tactic. If that's true, it changes everything. Because it means Meghan didn't come to represent. She came to reclaim. And it would explain the awkwardness that followed. Picture it. The morning of the event, internal organizers scrambling over the updated list. Meghan's name highlighted in yellow. No PR one-sheet provided. No talking points, guide distributed for press handlers. Confusion buzzing backstage. Was she meant to walk the carpet? If so, why wasn't her slot confirmed? That afternoon, whispers reportedly started circulating between the event's celebrity liaisons. She's coming? Seriously. One star, allegedly one of L'Oreal's top-tier ambassadors, was overheard asking if it was a mistake. Another asked bluntly, why her? And that question, why her, hung in the air like perfume that had long since gone sour. Because this event wasn't just about beauty. It was about believability. Real women, real voices, real purpose. Not royal titles. Not reality shows disguised as documentaries. So when Meghan showed up, draped in Dior, flanked by her Hollywood handlers, the air changed. Not because she wasn't beautiful, not because she didn't smile, but because the room could feel it. She didn't fit the theme. Not anymore. Let's rewind a bit. 2 years ago, Meghan was still basking in the afterglow of the Oprah interview. She had a podcast launch on the horizon. Netflix was releasing teasers for Harry and Meghan. Vogue was praising her as a modern feminist icon. And Hollywood? Still largely on her side. Back then, a Meghan Markle appearance would have made perfect sense. She was the embodiment of resistance. A woman who walked away from royalty. Who told her truth. Who stood up to the firm. But this year, everything changed. Spotify dumped archetypes. Netflix rumors swirled about deal renegotiations. Public support fractured. And Meghan's so-called comeback was faltering before it began. So when she arrived at L'Oreal's biggest night of the year, unannounced, unclaimed, and undeniably controversial, it sent shockwaves through the room. And here's where the contradiction kicks in. Because Meghan herself may have believed she belonged. Think about it. She's still a household name. Still headlines, international media. Still gets paparazzi clicks from Paris to Malibu. On paper, she's a star. But Hollywood? It doesn't read resumes. It reads the room. And the room that night said something very different. Now here's where things get messy. A PR executive who worked the event, speaking anonymously, told a media outlet that Meghan's inclusion created internal tension. According to their account, several high-profile attendees nearly pulled out last minute when they learned she would be there. One ambassador reportedly refused to sit at her originally assigned table once Meghan was added to the guest map. Another said, I'm not doing press if she's on the carpet. This wasn't casual discomfort. It was calculated resistance. And the fallout started before Meghan even arrived. Emails flying between publicists. Last-minute seat swaps. One executive even allegedly threatened to pull their brand client entirely unless Meghan was kept out of the spotlight. So by the time Meghan arrived, poised, polished, and ready for photos, the mood had shifted. No official welcome. No red carpet call-out. No coordinated press greeting. Just stiff smiles and cold stares. And Meghan noticed. Eyewitnesses claim her team began whispering minutes into her arrival. Adjusting strategy. Checking seating plans. One aide reportedly said, we're being iced. That moment, it changed the tone of her night. Because what Meghan expected was a platform. A second chance. A subtle PR pivot. What she got was silence. But here's what we haven't told you yet. According to one very credible source. Someone close to the event's vendor team. Meghan's attendance wasn't even authorized by L'Oréal Paris's global leadership. Instead, her presence had allegedly been brokered by a regional subpartner that went rogue in the name of social media buzz. That detail changes everything. It means Meghan's appearance might have been more than just awkward. It might have been unauthorized. If that's true, it explains why her presence wasn't promoted. Why top-tier stars seemed caught off guard. Why even the event's MC skipped over her name during table acknowledgments. She wasn't just out of place. She was unclaimed. And in Hollywood, nothing is more damning. Now ask yourself this. Why would someone as image-conscious as Meghan risk walking into that environment without certainty? Is it desperation or denial? Because if you truly believe you belong, you don't ask for permission. You assume the spotlight is yours. But what happens when you step into that spotlight and it quietly shuts off? That night, Meghan found out. And while she tried to hold her head high, the cracks were already forming. She adjusted her hair. She glanced over her shoulder. She smiled too long at an empty camera. And then she heard it. A whisper from behind. A name. A single name that made her blood freeze. Because it wasn't just a name, it was a warning. But what was it? And why did that one name shatter everything Meghan had planned for her comeback? We'll reveal that name. And the real power it held. Next. What happens when the most photographed woman in the room walks in, and nobody turns to look? That's exactly what played out at the L'Oréal Paris Women of Worth Gala when Meghan Markle stepped through the grand entrance of the Beverly Hilton ballroom. And the energy didn't rise, didn't shimmer, didn't sparkle. It dropped, like a chandelier whose bulbs had suddenly gone dim. And if you've ever been in a room where everyone pretends not to notice someone, you'll know that silence can be louder than screams. From the moment Meghan arrived, something was wrong. The lighting was perfect. The cameras were ready. Her dress? Flawless. Her hair? A silky cascade. The kind of appearance that once guaranteed headlines, fashion breakdowns, get the look clickbait. But this time, the air was weird. Like static. Like something was about to short circuit. And according to multiple eyewitnesses, it started at the valet. Yes, that early. Normally, a star like Meghan would pull up to a flood of flashbulbs. But this time, there was a delay. Her name wasn't on the priority arrival list. Security had to double-check credentials. One insider claims her vehicle was held behind a local philanthropist for a full 5 minutes, practically a red carpet eternity. And when she finally stepped out, no welcoming committee, no usher. Just one L'Oréal rep caught off guard, fumbling with a clipboard, allegedly whispering, "She wasn't on my list." Still, Meghan held the pose. She adjusted the collar of her gown, smiled at the cameras, flashed that old Hollywood magic. But the flashes? Sparse. Several photographers, notably, lowered their cameras. One walked away. Let's pause here. Ask yourself, how does a woman who once shut down Times Square with a single photo now face turned backs from Hollywood's elite media circle? Was it coordinated? Was it personal? Or was it something deeper? An unspoken decision among the press to avoid fanning the flames of someone many now consider controversial branding risk. Because in the PR world, that phrase, branding risk, is death. And Meghan's brand, at that moment, was radioactive. But it wasn't until she entered the ballroom that things truly soured. According to sources close to the floor managers, Meghan had been assigned a middle-table seat. Strategically placed, but not prime real estate. Think Tier 2. Visible, but not central. That in itself raised eyebrows. Remember, this was a woman who once sat front row at the Invictus Games with the entire British royal family. So why was she now parked near L'Oréal's European business consultants? Insiders claim it was deliberate. Several L'Oréal brand ambassadors, big names, had already requested buffer zones ahead of time. They didn't want to be photographed near Meghan. They didn't want the night to be about her. One even reportedly said, "This is about women who show up, not women who show up for attention." Ouch. And yet, Meghan tried. She floated from table to table. She reached out to old colleagues. She complimented someone's speech. At one point, she leaned in to chat with a group of actresses near the media wall. But the conversation fell flat. According to a guest seated nearby, Meghan asked, "Isn't this amazing? So many powerful women in one room." The reply? It was past tense. Subtle shade, but shade nonetheless. From there, the dominoes started to fall. Actresses who once championed her now barely offered nods. One even pulled her assistant close mid-conversation, breaking eye contact. Another pivoted away entirely. It was like watching someone drown in slow motion, but in stilettos and red lipstick. But Meghan wasn't oblivious. She could feel the shift. And that's where the emotional beat lands. Because for all her reputation as a polished, press-trained, Duchess-turned-dynamo, Meghan is still human. And in that moment, the mask cracked. Witnesses say her smile tightened. Her steps slowed. Her once radiant glow dimmed under the weight of rejection. And then came the moment that truly told the story. She approached a longtime acquaintance, an actress from a prior charity event, someone she'd publicly praised in interviews. The kind of safe zone Meghan likely counted on. But when she greeted her, a pause, and then the actress responded with a single word. Hi. That was it. No hug, no conversation. Just a cool, glacial, deliberately empty hi. You could feel the frost across the room. Now, this wasn't accidental. This was a tone, a message, a signal to everyone else. Don't engage too much. Hollywood doesn't scream its judgments. It doesn't boo. It whispers, avoids, subtly shifts seating charts, and lets you sweat in the silence. And Meghan? She was sweating. One source claims her assistant approached the event coordinator midway through the first speech, allegedly saying, "Is there another seat available closer to the stage?" The answer? A quiet no. No reshuffling. No accommodation. The program was locked. And for a woman used to doors opening before she even knocks, that locked door must have echoed like a gunshot. But let's zoom out. What exactly was this energy shift? Why would so many actresses, brand reps, executives, and journalists collectively turn the volume down on Meghan Markle? Was it jealousy? Resentment? Or something more structural? According to one PR strategist who's worked with several gala attendees, it wasn't personal, it was strategic optics. Meghan represents chaos right now, the strategist said. And these women have worked too hard, too long, to have their moment hijacked. That word again, hijacked. It's become a quiet accusation in media circles lately. That Meghan doesn't simply attend. She repositions. She rebrands herself into the narrative. She centers the moment. And for an event like this, meant to celebrate unsung heroes and community changemakers, that centering felt inappropriate to some. Another source added, it's not that she isn't worthy. It's that she makes everything about her worth. And that's a different thing. Savage. But fair? You decide. Because when Meghan sat down at her table, post-snubs, post-awkward interactions, she reportedly pulled out her phone. Not to text, not to scroll, but to read. Yes, read. That's right. According to the woman seated behind her, Meghan opened a digital document and began scrolling through what appeared to be notes or talking points. Was it a speech? Was she preparing for a photo op? Or was she planning an impromptu redemption move? Whatever it was, it didn't happen. Because something or someone shut it down before it began. Across the ballroom, a group of A-listers were gathering, laughing, toasting, posing for group shots. Meghan tried to join, not aggressively, just a natural sidle over, a lean in, a soft smile. But what happened next? They didn't move to include her. They closed the circle. One actress turned her back. Another adjusted her purse. A third stared at Meghan for a moment, and then looked away. And that was it. That was the moment. The exact second the Duchess of Sussex became invisible, not because she lacked beauty, or talent, or relevance, but because the room had decided she is not the story tonight. And that decision? It was final. So when Meghan's assistant returned to whisper something in her ear, when Meghan's shoulders stiffened, when she exhaled sharply and nodded, you could see it. Something had shifted inside her too. She knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misstep. It was an exclusion. Deliberate, chilling, brutal. But before she could retreat, before she could escape the growing eyes, the half-smiles, the cameras that were now avoiding her, a new sound rose from across the room. A whisper. One name. Spoken by someone with power. And that name? It stopped Meghan cold. Because it wasn't just a name. It was a ghost. And it was about to haunt the rest of her night. What hurts more, being attacked, or being ignored by the very women who once stood by your side? For Meghan Markle, it wasn't an angry mob, a hostile press, or even booing fans that broke her down that night. It was the absence, the eerie, suffocating absence of connection. The carefully choreographed cold shoulders from women she once called allies, sisters. And it didn't happen all at once. It unfolded slowly, like frost crawling across a window pane. Let's rewind to the moment that set it off. After the tense interactions on arrival, the stilted greetings, the lack of camera attention, Meghan still held out hope. Hope that someone in that room, someone, would reach out. A familiar face. A warm embrace. A private smile that said, "Don't worry, I've got you." But when she scanned the crowd, all she found were eyes looking through her. One source close to an event producer claimed Meghan had sent advance feelers to a few notable attendees. Women who, in past years, had either defended her in the press or collaborated on charity projects. Names like Reese Witherspoon, Natalie Portman, Jessica Chastain, even Eva Longoria. Some had, at one point, spoken positively about Meghan's voice, her empowerment messaging, her alleged passion for lifting other women. But on that night, radio silence. None of those women joined her table. None posed with her. Not one so much as leaned in for a whisper. And then came the moment that couldn't be explained away. When Meghan approached a tightly grouped circle of actresses during the cocktail hour, women she had publicly called inspirational sisters in past speeches, she was met with polite but unambiguous rejection. They turned their bodies away. They clinked glasses. They didn't stop her. They didn't greet her. They let her stand there, smiling, for 5 unbearable seconds, then carried on as though she was furniture. You could cut the tension with a diamond-encrusted knife. Here's where the contradiction cut deepest. This was an event about women celebrating other women, about empowerment, resilience, worth. And yet, a woman who built her public brand on precisely those values was being iced out by the very crowd that once cheered her rise. Why? One industry insider offered this chilling summary. Because for years, Meghan tried to be the poster child for female solidarity, without ever really joining the sisterhood. And the sisterhood noticed. Brutal. But is it true? Let's look at the receipts. After Meghan married into the royal family, her public image morphed from rising actress to global figure. But along the way, something changed. Her advocacy work, once passionate and collaborative, became more exclusive, carefully curated, highly controlled. Gone were the grassroots partnerships. Gone were the casual photos with fellow activists. What remained were sleek archwall press releases, tightly managed interviews, and solo spotlights. In Hollywood, that kind of positioning doesn't go unnoticed. Another source described Meghan's image strategy as disruptive but isolating. They said, she talked about uplifting women, but she rarely brought any up with her. No joint panels. No shared spotlights. It became the Meghan show. And sisterhood? It doesn't thrive under a spotlight hog. Which brings us back to the gala. Because the women at L'Oreal's 20th anniversary weren't just attendees, they were honorees. Power players. Some were survivors of abuse. Others were trailblazing directors, politicians, nonprofit leaders. And many had spent decades building networks based on shared struggle and mutual support. So when Meghan appeared, reportedly uninvited, unclaimed, and unacknowledged, it wasn't just awkward. It was offensive. To them, it looked like she parachuted in for optics. That she saw the word worth and tried to graft it onto herself, without first asking if she was still seen as worthy by her peers. Now let's talk about one very specific incident that ignited social media within minutes of the gala. Meghan allegedly approached one of L'Oreal's global beauty ambassadors, an iconic, Oscar-winning actress known for her activism and outspoken support of women. According to multiple sources, Meghan leaned in to say, "I've always admired how you fight for women's voices." The actress? She smiled and walked away. Didn't say a word. Didn't even pretend to respond. One source described Meghan's face as stunned. That clip, though it was only seconds long, was caught by someone filming behind a plant. It hasn't gone viral yet, but according to whispers online, several outlets are sitting on it, waiting. Because the fallout of that clip could be devastating. And yet, it didn't end there. Later that night, when the honorees gathered on stage for a commemorative group photo, Meghan's team reportedly asked if she could be included just in the back, quietly. The answer? A firm no. Not from the event coordinators, but from the women. According to one of the assistants working the lights, several honorees refused to participate if Meghan was added to the photo. One allegedly said, "She hasn't earned this moment. Not with us." And that's where the emotional gut punch hits hardest. Because love her or loathe her, Meghan has positioned herself as a woman who survived the unthinkable. Tabloid assault, institutional rejection, betrayal, isolation. She's spoken openly about suicidal ideation, about racism, about motherhood under siege. And yet, In the one room where empathy should have overflowed, there was none. Is that fair? Maybe not. But this wasn't about fairness. It was about perception, credibility, trust. And right now, Meghan's credibility, at least in that room, is in ashes. Let's not forget one more detail that adds gasoline to the fire. Several A-listers posted cryptic Instagram stories later that night. One read, "Real recognizes real." Another, "Earned, not bought." And the third, just a single word, "Oof." No names, no context. But the timing? Unmistakable. And the meaning? Clear. They were talking about her. Now here's the most painful contradiction. Meghan likely went to that gala to reconnect, to realign herself with powerful women, to remind Hollywood that she's still one of them, not a duchess, not an outsider, but a peer. But sisterhood can't be performed. It has to be shared. And on that night, there were no sisters waiting for her. Only silence, and glances, and subtle humiliations layered like perfume. One final moment sealed it. At the end of the main event, as guests prepared for the post-gala mingle, Meghan reportedly made one last attempt to bridge the divide. She walked up to a former co-star, someone she hadn't seen in over a decade, and reached for a hug. What she got? A half smile, a step back, a handshake, not even a full one. Fingertips. And then, the whispered line that dropped like a bomb. "This probably isn't the right night, Meg." And just like that, she was alone again. She turned, exhaled, and headed toward her table, eyes unfocused, smile gone. But just before she sat, someone at a nearby table said something. Not loud, just loud enough. One word, a name. And when Meghan heard it, when she realized who else might be watching this entire thing unfold from afar, her body went still. Because that name? It wasn't just gossip. It was personal. It was painful. And it was about to crack the night wide open. What if one whispered name could shatter your entire night? Not a confrontation. Not a scandal. Not a headline. Just a single name, said quietly, by someone who didn't think you'd hear it. For Meghan Markle, that moment came in a flash, and it changed everything. You see, up until that point in the gala, Meghan had been fighting to hold it together. The snubs, the forced smiles, the subtle rejections. Yes, they hurt. But she was still standing, still hoping, still telling herself she could power through. But what she heard next, that was different, because it didn't come from a rival. It came from someone she thought had disappeared from her life. Let's set the scene. The gala was in full swing. Champagne flowed. A musical tribute to women entrepreneurs had just ended. Attendees had relaxed ever so slightly. The lights dimmed into a soft, amber glow. Small clusters formed again near the bar, near the silent auction displays, near the circular velvet lounges reserved for VIPs. Meghan was seated stiffly at her table, flanked by two of her assistants, neither A-list, neither known. Her plate untouched, her wine glass full. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't chatting. She was watching, scanning, still waiting for something to shift. That's when it happened. Just 2 tables away, a group of women, young, fashionable, clearly clued in, were huddled close in conversation. Not loud, not drawing attention, but Meghan heard one word. Or rather, one name. Gwyneth. And that's when everything stopped. Her posture changed instantly. Shoulders stiffened. Chin tilted. Lips slightly parted in that telltale, "Did I just hear that" expression? Because that name wasn't random. It was loaded, personal, strategic. And in that moment, it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths. Let's rewind. You might be wondering, what does Gwyneth Paltrow have to do with Meghan Markle? The answer is layered. And it's been brewing under the surface of Hollywood's power circles for years. Because while the two women have never feuded publicly, there's a long-standing tension between Meghan's outsider feminism and Gwyneth's establishment chic. Both actresses, both powerful, both married into elite status. Gwyneth to Coldplay frontman Chris Martin, and later Brad Falchuk, producer royalty. Meghan to Prince Harry. Both curated luxury lifestyles. Both became mothers in the public eye. Both built brands around personal empowerment. But here's where the lines diverge. Gwyneth's brand, Goop, is about wellness, transparency, high-end spiritualism. Love it or hate it, it's cohesive. She's carved out a niche. She makes fun of herself. She leans into the absurdity. Meghan's brand, it's been shakier, inconsistent, at times overly curated. At other times, awkwardly performative. Too much mystery. Too many reboots. And Hollywood noticed. According to several insiders, Gwyneth's circle has long seen Meghan as someone who tries to build influence through exposure rather than longevity. One stylist even called her a disruptor without a foundation. And allegedly, Gwyneth said as much at a private dinner last year. She doesn't know who she is yet, and the industry can smell that. Harsh, but real. Now fast forward back to the gala. Meghan hears the name. Her face hardens. Because this isn't just gossip. This isn't harmless chatter. This is a warning shot. Because in that room, at that event, for that name to be spoken within earshot, it wasn't an accident. It was a message. One guest later described Meghan's expression as a total shift. The glow disappeared. The warmth evaporated. Her jaw tightened. She stopped looking around. She stared straight ahead. Why? Because whether Gwyneth Paltrow was physically present or not didn't matter. Her presence was there. Her influence. Her reach. Her silent endorsement, or lack thereof. Hollywood is a town built on whispers. And the right name, said at the right time, can be louder than any mic drop. Let's break down what might have been going through Meghan's mind in that moment. Was Gwyneth warning people behind the scenes not to engage? Was she influencing the A-listers to distance themselves? Was her name being used as a code word? Because if Meghan was being frozen out by the sisterhood, Gwyneth's approval or disapproval could have been the invisible hand guiding that decision. And Meghan knew it. That whisper, that trigger, flipped her entire night upside down. Witnesses say she barely moved for 5 minutes after. Then, slowly, she stood up, adjusted her dress, clutched her clutch tighter than before, and began to pace. Not dramatically, not to make a scene, just a slow, deliberate walk toward the bar area, toward where the whisper came from. Her assistants tried to intercept. One allegedly said, "Maybe we should sit back down." But Meghan brushed her off. She walked straight past the bar, then stopped. Because there, just out of sight from most guests, was a group of stylists, agents, and junior execs, talking, giggling, sipping drinks. And they went silent the moment she appeared. Not out of respect, out of fear. One girl, barely 30, made direct eye contact, then looked away. And that's when Meghan turned back. She wasn't going to confront. She was going to retreat. But not before she saw something else. A phone, a screen, a text, from someone across the room. Meghan couldn't see the sender, but she saw the name flash on the lock screen. GP. And that was it. Confirmation. Maybe not hard proof, but enough. Enough to know she'd been targeted. Not publicly. Worse, privately. Silently. Elegantly. The way Gwyneth operates. Not through tabloids. Through tone. And Meghan? She cracked. Back at her table, she sat, rigid, fuming, humiliated. One assistant handed her water. Another whispered something. She waved them both away. She was spiraling, because she realized, in that moment, that she wasn't just being excluded. She was being orchestrated out. And the person doing it didn't even have to be in the room to succeed. Here's the bigger picture. Meghan and Gwyneth represent two opposing poles of the post-Me Too era of female celebrity power. One carefully treads the line of transparency and tradition. The other disrupts. Gwyneth reinvents quietly. Meghan reinvents loudly. And that night, one woman's name had the power to erase the other's presence, without ever being said above a whisper. Now let's turn to the fallout. What did Meghan do next? She stood up. Again. And this time, she left the table. Her assistants trailed behind, clearly unsure what the new plan was. One even pulled out a phone, seemingly to notify the car service. But before she could leave, another bomb dropped. Another name was whispered. This time louder. And this name was worse. Because it wasn't about Hollywood power. It was about royal pain. A name from her past. A name tied to her deepest trauma. A name that, when spoken in that ballroom, stopped her cold once again. And this time, she didn't just crack. She broke. Can you survive a war you didn't even know you were drafted into? Because that's exactly what Meghan Markle walked into at the L'Oréal Paris Women of Worth Gala. Without armor, without allies, and without the faintest idea just how deep the trenches ran. And the moment she heard that second name, everything changed. Let's go back. Meghan was mid-stride, leaving the table. One assistant already notifying the car. Her expression set in porcelain. But then came the second whisper, this one behind her, just audible over the clinking of champagne flutes and the swelling orchestral background music. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. But it pierced through everything. One word. One name. Kate. Yes, that Kate. Catherine, Princess of Wales. And just like that, the room spun. Because if hearing Gwyneth reminded Meghan she was no longer welcome in Hollywood's inner circle, hearing Kate reminded her that she no longer belonged anywhere. It was a 1-2 punch. And this second one hit like a freight train. Why? Because in that moment, the unspoken truth became impossible to ignore. Meghan wasn't just being excluded for who she was. She was being punished for who she used to be. Let's connect the dots. For years, Hollywood held Meghan up as the anti-Kate, the disruptor, the progressive, the brave voice against the ancient, buttoned-up institution. She was the modern Cinderella who didn't wait for the prince. She called out the castle. But something shifted in 2023, and by 2025 it was crystal clear. Kate stopped playing defense. She started winning hearts. She stayed silent through the chaos. She stepped up after the Queen's death. She led. And the media? They noticed. Hollywood power brokers noticed. The very same actresses who once whispered support for Meghan began admiring Kate's grace under pressure. Her elegance. Her consistency. Her refusal to trade dignity for attention. And so when Meghan walked into the Beverly Hilton that night, she wasn't just a woman trying to reclaim her place. She was a symbol. A symbol of a battle Hollywood had quietly chosen a side on. And it wasn't hers. Because beneath the glamour, there's a brewing civil war in Hollywood. Not loud, not obvious, but deep and very real. It's a war between authenticity and performance, between legacy and reinvention, between the Gwyneths and the Meghans. And make no mistake, names like Cate Blanchett, Viola Davis, Julianne Moore, and Michelle Yeoh are on one side. Women who rose through craft, not crisis. Women who own their flaws but don't spin them into brands. Women who see Meghan's endless reinventions not as brave, but as calculated. Then there's the other side. Younger, louder, more digital. The influencers. The ex-reality stars turned activists. The women in podcasting movement. That side sees Meghan as a victim, a survivor, a truth teller. But at the gala, only one side showed up. And Meghan wasn't on it. In fact, she had no side at all. She walked into a room where the war was already decided, where the lines had already been drawn, and where she was the casualty, not the commander. So when that name, Kate, was whispered behind her, Meghan didn't just flinch. She froze, because she realized the comparisons weren't just a royal family problem anymore. They had followed her across the Atlantic, into Hollywood, into the very space she thought would protect her. And worse, people were enjoying it. According to one guest, the whisper wasn't even malicious. It was mocking. Not Kate as an insult. Kate as the punchline. A kind of unspoken joke about grace, timing, class. The implication? Meghan was failing at all three. And suddenly, every awkward glance, every withheld hug, every denied photo, every frozen smile, it all made sense. Meghan wasn't just being left out. She was being used. Used as a cautionary tale. As an example. As the woman who tried to own every narrative, only to be outmaneuvered by someone who said nothing at all. And the irony? Meghan had believed silence was complicity. But in Hollywood 2025, silence is strategy. It's respect. It's power. And Meghan? She hadn't been silent in years. So the verdict was clear. She was no longer viewed as brave. She was viewed as exhausting. Let's talk about what happened next. After hearing the name, Meghan turned sharply. She looked behind her. No one admitted it. No one made eye contact. But the giggle from a cocktail group said it all. They knew she heard. And they didn't care. That was the moment Meghan's team knew. One assistant said something, likely suggesting a quick exit. But Meghan didn't move. She stood there, frozen, for 10 full seconds. Then she blinked. And when she finally spoke, it was to herself. A whisper. One guest seated nearby later said they heard her say it, almost under her breath. Not again. Not again. Not another room where she wasn't welcome. Not another circle where she was on the outside. Not another comparison she couldn't control. Because this wasn't just an uncomfortable night anymore. It was a full-blown pattern. And the woman who once outmaneuvered the world's oldest institution now couldn't find a single ally in a ballroom full of supposed progressives. That's when she started walking. Not back to her table, not to the exit, but straight to the far corner of the ballroom. Toward the VIP bar, where only the most trusted talent, reps, and organizers were allowed. Her team followed, visibly unsure. The bar manager recognized her instantly, but paused. She wasn't on the VIP list. Not that part of it. Another assistant tried to smooth things over. Words were exchanged. Then a shrug. And a step back. Meghan was let through, but barely. And behind the counter? A new wall. A different war. Because at that very moment, a known publicist, someone who had worked both with Gwyneth and the royals in the past, glanced up, saw Meghan, sipped her drink, and said to her colleague, "She doesn't know she lost." And maybe she didn't. Or maybe she was just now realizing it. That the war she thought she could control had already ended. That Hollywood had already voted. That there was no more us versus them. Just them. And not her. But the final blow of the night? It was still coming. Because as Meghan turned to leave the bar area, emotionally gutted, visibly shaken, a quiet alert popped up on one of her assistant's phones. A headline. From an industry blog. Just posted. Time-stamped during the event. Meghan Markle crashes gala honoring real women. Sources say she wasn't invited. And that headline, would break the internet by morning. But Meghan didn't wait for morning. She dropped her clutch, grabbed her coat, and told her team, "We're leaving. Now." But what she didn't know was that security had already been alerted. Because someone else had made a call. And that someone was about to change everything. What do you do when you're the most recognizable woman in the room, and security starts watching you? Not protecting, not escorting, monitoring. That's what happened next. Because just as Meghan Markle whispered the words, "We're leaving," a silent call had already been placed. Not by her, not by anyone on her team, but by someone with authority. Someone who had been watching, listening, coordinating. And they had made a quiet decision. Keep eyes on the Duchess. Not because she posed a threat, but because the room had decided she was a liability. Let that sink in. Meghan Markle, Hollywood royalty, former British royal, global activist, was now being flagged by event security. And the kicker? No one had to say it out loud. This is how Hollywood handles problems it doesn't want to own. Quietly, behind the scenes, with smiles still plastered on every face and music still flowing through the speakers, security began shifting positions. One near the main entrance, one by the media lounge, and two near the back hallway, where VIP guests were quietly escorted when press attention became too much. And Meghan? She hadn't even noticed yet. But her assistants had. They saw the shoulder taps, the discreet radio checks, the subtle hand signals between staffers. And they knew. The air changed. It wasn't panic, but it was containment. Like something explosive had entered the building, and the team had been told to quietly make sure it didn't go off. But why? Why such a reaction to one woman deciding to leave an event? Because someone at that gala had pulled the ultimate Hollywood move. They made a decision. A single word passed from a PR executive to an event director. Control. Control the optics. Control the photos. Control the exit. Because up until that moment, Meghan had done nothing wrong. No outbursts. No tantrums. No public scenes. But after the Gwyneth whisper, after the Kate whisper, after the rumors of her crashing, the gala had already started spreading to online outlets. The fear wasn't what she'd already done. It was what she might do next. Would she make a speech? Would she confront someone? Would she leave dramatically, on purpose, to create a viral moment? No one knew. So they prepared for all of it. The L'Oréal Paris Gala was a PR fortress. Nothing gets out without approval. No image published unless it's flattering. No story spun unless it elevates the brand. And Meghan? She had become unpredictable, a rogue element, an unknown variable in a night meant to celebrate controlled narratives. So while her team fumbled to locate her driver, and Meghan paced toward the rear exit with her head high and heart hammering, the quiet machinery of the event had already kicked into place. A private hallway was cleared. 2 staffers were sent to intercept photographers at the loading dock, and the building's head of security issued a direct order. Do not let any paparazzi follow her out. Translation? Contain the fallout. Let her leave, but make sure she disappears without headlines. Meghan, however, was still Meghan. She was used to cameras, to documenting every moment, to shaping the narrative. So just before they reached the exit, she turned to her assistant and whispered, "Where's the red carpet?" The assistant hesitated, then replied, "They took it down an hour ago." That was the moment it hit her. She wasn't leaving. She was being escorted out. This wasn't a grand exit. It was a cleanup operation. And someone, somewhere in that building, had called it in. Let's rewind. Roughly 15 minutes earlier, as Meghan was sitting alone at her table following the Gwyneth and Kate incidents, someone from the event's top-level PR team had made a quiet call to L'Oreal Corporate. The message was simple. We may have a situation. No details, just a trigger phrase. It's standard protocol at this level of high-stakes brand management. When a guest, especially one with global attention, is causing disruption, a quiet heads-up is sent to HQ. And the response? Crisp, efficient. A pre-approved contingency plan was activated. Meghan would be allowed to leave. No confrontation, no drama, but absolutely no spotlight. Let her disappear, and make sure she doesn't turn it into a scene. That's how fast Hollywood moves. Within 5 minutes, a second call was made. This time, to the event photographer's lead assistant. The instruction? Do not publish any shots of Meghan unless cleared. Flag all images. And with that, Meghan Markle, former centerpiece of royal fanfare, once hailed as the face of modern womanhood, was effectively erased from the evening's official visual record. Now think about what that means. This is a woman whose every appearance once triggered global fashion trends, feminist op-eds, media debates. And now? Hollywood's most powerful event managers had decided. It's better if no one sees her at all. That is devastating. And Meghan knew it. As she reached the side exit, the silence hit her harder than any words. No one followed. No one shouted her name. No cameras clicked. Just the sound of distant music echoing from the ballroom, and the soft thud of the security door opening for her exit. But the final blow? It came from the man holding the door. The security guard. Mid-50s, clean-cut, earpiece in, looked her in the eyes. And he didn't smile. He nodded once, and said, "Have a safe night, ma'am." Ma'am. Not Duchess. Not Ms. Markle. Not Meghan. Just ma'am. Neutral. Cold. Professional. As if she was just any guest being walked out for overstaying her welcome. Not a star. Not a voice. Not a name. And that broke her. She turned, covered her face. And finally, she cried. No one saw it but her team. No cameras. No crowd. Just a flash of vulnerability. A queen without a court. A duchess without a title. A woman without a stage. But as she climbed into the waiting SUV and the doors slammed shut, something inside her changed. She pulled out her phone, opened her notes app, and began typing furiously. Because if she couldn't reclaim the night on their terms, she would reclaim it on hers. But what she was typing would shock everyone. Because Meghan wasn't just planning a response. She was planning a counterattack. One that would drag names, break alliances, and flip the Hollywood sisterhood inside out. And the first target was someone no one expected her to go after. Someone once very, very close to her. What happens when you try to force a smile, and someone smiles back just to shut you down? That was the moment Meghan Markle realized the walls weren't just closing in. They were already closed. And in the next few minutes, one of the most humiliating face-offs of the night would unfold, right in front of the Hollywood elite. It didn't involve screaming. It didn't involve confrontation. It involved a look, a pause, a phrase that would ripple across the internet within hours. And it all started with one last act of desperation. Let's rewind. After the security escort, after the quiet decision to erase her from the official record, after the whispers of Gwyneth and Kate shattered her emotional resolve, Meghan was almost out the door. Almost, but not quite. Because just before she disappeared, she spotted a familiar face across the VIP lounge. An actress, a peer, a woman whose name has been attached to global blockbusters, humanitarian campaigns, and, most notably, a decades-long reputation for kindness in an industry addicted to cliques and cruelty. Meghan saw her. She hesitated, and then she pivoted. A final attempt to salvage the night. Maybe if she could speak to someone beloved. Maybe if she could get a photo with her. Maybe the narrative could still be shaped. Because in Meghan's mind, nothing had truly broken until it was captured by the press. So if she could fix that, maybe she could fix everything. Her team saw her pivot and panicked. One assistant whispered, "We should go." But Meghan shook her head. 1 minute. She walked straight toward the actress. And at first, it looked hopeful. The woman smiled faintly when she saw her. But then everything changed. Because what Meghan didn't know, what no one told her, was that this particular actress had already been warned. A quiet word from her agent earlier in the evening. "Don't engage too much. Optics are tricky tonight." So when Meghan reached her, when she leaned in with that polished grin, hand outstretched, eyes searching for connection, the actress didn't embrace her. She didn't hug. She didn't even say her name. Instead, she stepped slightly back, smiled, and said, "I think you're looking for someone else." 10 words, delivered with honeyed civility, and enough ice to freeze the room. Meghan blinked, stunned. Was it a joke? Was it code? Was it a misdirect? No, it was intentional. Because the message wasn't for Meghan. It was for the room. A signal. "I'm not with her." And Hollywood picked up on it immediately. Nearby guests turned subtly, not to intervene, but to watch. Because at this level of fame, these moments are blood sport. Meghan, realizing the blow had landed, tried to recover. She laughed softly, said, "Oh no, it's you I wanted to say hello to." The actress's reply? A smile, but nothing more. And then, she turned her body. Not rudely, just enough. A half pivot toward her own group, leaving Meghan standing there, alone, with half a sentence still on her lips. It was brutal, but it wasn't done. Because just as Meghan began to back away, red-faced, trying to hold posture, another woman from the group turned to the actress and asked, not quite softly enough, "Was that real?" To which the actress replied, with perfect calm, "She needs to go home." And Meghan heard it, every word, and she froze. Because at that moment, she wasn't the Duchess of Sussex. She wasn't a speaker. She wasn't a survivor. She wasn't an icon. She was just a woman. Unwanted. Humiliated. Dismissed. And the very people she once stood beside had now turned into her audience and her judges. What came next? Something no one expected. Meghan snapped. Not in the way tabloids fantasize. She didn't shout. She didn't storm. She laughed. Loud. Dry. A single, bitter laugh that cut across the nearby conversations like a dropped champagne flute. The group turned. One assistant stepped forward, clearly terrified she was about to say something catastrophic. But Meghan didn't. She caught herself, clenched her jaw, and said, quietly, but sharply, "Don't worry. You'll all still get your quotes tomorrow." And that was the final twist of the knife. Because what Meghan revealed in that moment, whether she meant to or not, was the part she had never said publicly. That she knows. She knows they're watching her, waiting for her to fall, ready to use her name, her brand, her missteps for clicks, commentary, or clout. And with those words, she walked away. The room didn't follow. It just exhaled, as if a collective tension had lifted. Meghan was leaving, and the show could finally begin. But the damage? It was already done. Because within minutes, someone had texted that quote. "You'll all still get your quotes tomorrow," to a Hollywood gossip blogger. Within an hour, it would be on Twitter. By morning, it would headline page 6. And the story would explode. But let's take a moment here. This wasn't just about Meghan being rejected. This was a rare, brutal example of what happens when fame collides with fatigue. Because Hollywood loves a redemption story, but it hates desperation. And to those in the room, Meghan no longer seemed empowered. She seemed exhausted. Worse, exploitable. And the vultures? They were circling. The photographer who wasn't supposed to take pictures? He had taken 2, and sold them before midnight. The headline the next day? Meghan Markle confronts A-lister, gets shut down. She needs to go home. But here's what no one else saw. Just before she reached the side hallway again, Meghan's assistant showed her something. A message. From someone unexpected. Someone watching from afar. Not in that room. But still deeply, irrevocably connected. A former friend. A royal. A woman whose name hadn't come up all night. Until now. And that message would destroy what little resolve Meghan had left. What happens when the most photographed woman in the room walks in, and nobody turns to look? That's exactly what played out at the L'Oréal Paris Women of Worth Gala when Meghan Markle stepped through the grand entrance of the Beverly Hilton ballroom. And the energy didn't rise, didn't shimmer, didn't sparkle. It dropped, like a chandelier whose bulbs had suddenly gone dim. And if you've ever been in a room where everyone pretends not to notice someone, you'll know that silence can be louder than screams. From the moment Meghan arrived, something was wrong. The lighting was perfect. The cameras were ready. Her dress? Flawless. Her hair? A silky cascade. The kind of appearance that once guaranteed headlines, fashion breakdowns, get the look clickbait. But this time, the air was weird. Like static. Like something was about to short-circuit. And according to multiple eyewitnesses, it started at the valet. Yes, that early. Normally, a star like Meghan would pull up to a flood of flashbulbs. But this time, there was a delay. Her name wasn't on the priority arrival list. Security had to double-check credentials. One insider claims her vehicle was held behind a local philanthropist for a full 5 minutes. Practically a red carpet eternity. And when she finally stepped